There comes a point in every person's life when control no longer works. You've planned, you've pushed, you've prayed, and yet something refuses to move. You've tried to make life obey your timeline, but it doesn't. You've tried to hold everything together, but the tighter you grip, the more it slips away. And then in that exhausted stillness, something inside you whispers, let. At first it sounds like defeat. To surrender feels like giving up. But there's a difference between surrendering to life and being conquered by it. True surrender isn't about weakness, it's about wisdom. It's the moment your mind finally admits what your soul always knew. Control was never the way, trust was. Because faith heals what control can't. The human brain loves certainty. It craves patterns, outcomes, guarantees. But life doesn't operate by our logic. It operates by lessons. You can't calculate healing. You can't force timing. You can't manipulate meaning. You can only participate in it. And the more you try to control what's meant to unfold, the more you delay the very peace you're chasing. That's the paradox of the human heart. It wants freedom, but fears release. You've probably felt it before, that moment when everything stops responding to effort, the relationship you tried to fix, the opportunity that never arrived, the door that wouldn't open no matter how hard you knocked. It wasn't rejection, it was redirection. Surrender doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop carrying what isn't yours. And the moment you do, something miraculous begins. The storm you were trying to control starts to calm. The anxiety that ruled your nights begins to fade. Because surrender shifts your focus from forcing outcomes to trusting alignment. It tells your nervous system, you're safe now. It lets faith do what fear couldn't. Ask yourself, what if you stopped controlling for just one day? What if you trusted the timing instead of fighting it? That's not giving up. That's growing up. That's spiritual maturity disguised as peace. The psychology of surrender is not about losing control. It's about finally being free from the illusion that you ever had it. Because what faith heals, control never can. There's a strange comfort in control. It makes us feel powerful, safe, predictable. When life feels uncertain, control becomes our security blanket. We plan, we push, we organize every detail, hoping the precision will protect us from pain. But deep down, we know it doesn't work that way. Life moves in mystery, not mathematics. And the more we try to command what's beyond us, the more anxiety we create within us. Control is the mind's illusion of safety. It convinces us that if we just do everything right, if we choose the right job, the right person, the right path, then nothing will fall apart. But control doesn't prevent heartbreak, loss, or uncertainty. It only delays acceptance. The mind may think it's protecting you, but what it's really doing is exhausting you. It's keeping you in a state of constant tension, always managing, always fixing, always fearing what might happen if you stop. Psychologically, this obsession with control comes from fear. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of failure. When the mind doesn't trust the unknown, it overcompensates by trying to manage everything. You can see it in your relationships, your career, even your faith. You cling tighter when things feel unstable. You plan further when outcomes feel unclear. You talk more when silence would serve you better. Because we mistake control for care. We think holding on proves love, but sometimes it prevents growth. Surrender doesn't mean you stop trying. It means you stop forcing. There's a difference between effort and attachment. Effort is healthy, it's participation, but attachment is fear. It's dependency on an outcome for peace. The moment you tie your happiness to something outside your control, you hand your power away. True faith is not passive, it's participatory trust. It's doing your best while allowing space for grace. Imagine a river. Control is you trying to swim upstream, fighting current after current, exhausting your strength, demanding the water move your way. Surrender is you learning to float, not by giving up, but by aligning with flow. You still move, but the effort is different. You're not fighting, you're guided. You're not panicking, you're present. You're not forcing, you're trusting. The psychology of surrender teaches that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from cooperation. The mind wants to be the master, but the soul was designed to follow meaning, not manipulation. When you surrender, you stop asking, how do I fix this? And start asking, what is this teaching me? That shift transforms pressure into presence. It turns struggle into surrender, chaos into clarity. You've probably had moments where control completely failed you, where no matter how hard you tried, something you wanted slipped away. Maybe a door closed, a person left, or a plan collapsed. At first it felt like punishment, but with time, haven't you noticed how those moments led you to something better? Something you couldn't have planned if you tried? That's not coincidence. That's divine design revealing itself once you got out of the way. When you let go, you make space. Control is a clenched fist. Surrender is an open palm. Nothing new can enter a life that's clenched. But once you release, once you trust, once you exhale and say, maybe I don't need to know right now, you invite peace to take the place of panic. Faith begins where your control ends. That's the hidden power of surrender. It doesn't take things from you, it transforms the way you see them. The situation may not change, but your state of being does. The same world that once made you anxious now makes you aware. The same moment that once felt chaotic now feels sacred. And in that shift, healing begins. The nervous system calms, the breath deepens. You stop bracing for life and start participating in it. This is the paradox. The moment you stop fighting for control, you finally gain it. Not over life, but over your own peace. Ask yourself, what would happen if you trusted the process more than your plan? The answer is freedom. Not the reckless kind, but the spiritual kind. The freedom that comes when you stop wrestling with life and start walking with it. That's not giving up control, that's upgrading it from fear-based effort to faith-based flow. Because the truth is, life doesn't bend to your control, it responds to your cooperation. The more you fight, the more you suffer, the more you flow, the more you heal. Control is the language of fear. Surrender is the language of faith. And faith quietly and consistently heals what control never could. The hardest thing for the human mind to do is to let go. It's wired to predict, to calculate, to find safety in patterns. The mind says, if I can just figure it out, I can fix it. That belief gives us a temporary illusion of control, but it also keeps us trapped in constant anxiety. When life doesn't cooperate, the mind panics. It doesn't understand surrender because surrender can't be measured, predicted, or proven. It can only be experienced. Control gives the brain something to hold on to. It's the voice that says, if I plan harder, work longer, try more, then I'll finally feel safe. But have you noticed how even after you get what you want, peace never lasts? That's because peace created by control is temporary. It depends on perfect conditions. Faith, on the other hand, creates permanent peace because it doesn't depend on conditions, it depends on connection. Psychology teaches that control is rooted in fear, a survival mechanism that once kept us alive. But what protects the body often imprisons the soul. You can't be in fear and faith at the same time. The mind can't surrender as long as it's trying to survive. That's why real healing doesn't begin in the body, it begins in the belief. Surrender teaches the nervous system a new truth. Safety doesn't come from control, it comes from trust. Every person carries a secret storm inside. For some, it's the fear of loss. For others, the pain of uncertainty. The common thread is the need to control the uncontrollable. You try to manage people, outcomes, even God. But faith is not about management, it's about alignment. The universe, or if you prefer God, doesn't need your micromanagement, it needs your cooperation. Your role is not to predict, but to participate. Not to master, but to move with meaning. This is why surrender feels like death at first. The ego screams, if I'm not in control, who am I? But the self that fears surrender is the same self that's been suffering under the weight of control. When you let go, you don't lose yourself. You meet your true self for the first time. The calm, clear, connected self that isn't rushing to fix or prove anything. The self that trusts timing instead of forcing outcomes. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You'll begin to notice something miraculous once you stop forcing, life starts flowing. The phone call you've been waiting for comes out of nowhere. The answer you've been praying for shows up in a whisper, not a shout. You'll realize that the things you were chasing begin to find you the moment you stop running after them. Because surrender aligns you with rhythm. It allows what's meant for you to locate you without struggle. From a psychological perspective, this is when the brain shifts from fight or flight into flow. The chemicals that once fueled panic, cortisol, adrenaline, start to decrease. The hormones of peace, serotonin, oxytocin, begin to rise. You breathe deeper, your shoulders drop, you think clearer. That's not magic, that's biology meeting belief. The body heals in safety, and surrender is the deepest form of safety there is. When you stop demanding that life follow your blueprint, you give it permission to reveal a better one. You start seeing delays as detours, rejections as redirections, endings as openings. The world didn't change, your perception did. That's the psychological miracle of surrender. Your eyes open where fear once blinded you. You see patterns instead of problems. You sense lessons instead of losses. Think of it like this. You're on a plane and turbulence hits. You grip the seat, heart racing as if your grip could stabilize the aircraft. But it doesn't. You're holding tension that changes nothing. The only thing that actually helps is breathing and trusting the pilot. Life works the same way. Surrender doesn't make the turbulence disappear. It stops you from exhausting yourself through resistance. In surrender, your prayers change. You stop asking for things to go your way and start asking for strength to align with what's right. You stop saying, "Why me?" and start saying, "Show me." That subtle shift in language rewires the entire nervous system. It trains your brain to interpret uncertainty as expansion, not danger. That's why people who live by faith are often the calmest souls in the room. Not because they don't feel fear, but because they've befriended it. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop needing control, you start gaining influence. You start noticing synchronicities, signs, moments, doors that open at the exact time they should. It feels like life is conspiring with you instead of against you. That's what psychologists call the flow state. Spiritually, it's grace. Either way, the principle is the same. Surrender brings alignment, and alignment brings peace. Ask yourself, what are you still gripping that's keeping your hands too full to receive what's next? Sometimes letting go isn't about losing control, it's about making space. Because the universe or God can't fill what you're already clinging to. This is why faith heals what control can't. Control exhausts. Faith restores. Control isolates. Faith connects. Control fears the unknown. Faith thrives in it. And that's the beauty of surrender. It doesn't just change your circumstances, it changes your chemistry. It doesn't make life easier, it makes you lighter. There's a beautiful kind of strength that comes when you finally stop trying to control how people, plans, and outcomes unfold. It's the strength of surrender, quiet, calm, and deeply rooted in faith. You begin to realize that what you tried so hard to control was never meant to be forced. It was meant to be trusted. Surrender doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring differently. You shift from anxiety to alignment, from tension to trust, and that shift begins to heal every area of your life. You can see it first in your relationships. Control makes you cling, but surrender makes you compassionate. When you stop trying to make people behave the way you expect, you start allowing them to show who they truly are. You stop chasing closure from others and start creating it within yourself. You realize that some people were not sent to stay. They were sent to shape you. And the moment you stop controlling how others see you, your peace stops depending on their perception. That's emotional maturity, when you choose peace over performance. Control asks, how can I change them? Surrender asks, what are they teaching me? Control demands outcomes. Surrender learns lessons. When you surrender, you begin to love people for who they are, not who you want them to be. And that kind of love is freeing for you and for them. In psychology, this process is called differentiation, the ability to stay connected to people while remaining centered in yourself. You can hold space for others without losing yourself in their chaos. You can care deeply without caring everything. That's what happens when the mind heals through faith. Boundaries become acts of love instead of fear. You learn that detachment isn't coldness, it's clarity. You're not withdrawing from life, you're withdrawing from control. The same applies to your decisions. When you live by control, every choice feels like pressure. You fear making the wrong move, as if one mistake could ruin your destiny. But surrender removes that fear, because you realize purpose doesn't depend on perfection. It depends on participation. You do what you can, and you trust that grace will cover the rest. You stop seeing life as a test you can fail, and start seeing it as a conversation you can grow through. That's what faith does. It replaces the question, what if it goes wrong, with what if it leads me right? It turns overthinking into observation, panic into patience. You don't rush anymore. You no longer force opportunities. You prepare for them. You stop saying, I need to make this happen, and start saying, if it's meant for me, I can't miss it. That's not laziness. That's spiritual intelligence. Something amazing happens when you trust like that. Your energy changes. People sense it. You walk into rooms differently. You stop negotiating your worth because your peace speaks louder than your pitch. You stop fighting for seats at tables that don't align with your calling. You no longer beg for validation because you finally understand when something requires you to lose yourself to keep it, it's not a blessing, it's a bargain. Surrender frees you from those bargains. It reminds you that no divine blessing demands self-betrayal. The doors meant for you will never require pretending to be someone else. That's the new psychology of surrender, understanding that authenticity is the highest form of faith. You trust that being real is enough, that peace is more profitable than proving. Ask yourself, how many times have you forced what was fading or held on to what was hurting just because you feared letting go? The truth is, control often keeps us in situations that faith would have already released us from. Letting go is hard, but not letting go costs more. The moment you surrender, space opens, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That space becomes your sanctuary. You start hearing your own intuition again. You start feeling calm in your body. You make better decisions, not because you're lucky, but because you're listening. Surrender sharpens intuition, control blocks it. The quieter you become, the more clearly you sense what's truly right. And then, almost without realizing it, you start attracting differently. The friends who once drained you no longer call. The opportunities that once felt forced stop appearing. In their place, new connections show up, lighter, aligned, peaceful. You'll see it, people who meet you where you are, without needing you to shrink or shout. That's not coincidence, it's alignment. Surrender changed your vibration. Even your definition of success changes. It's no longer about what you can prove. It's about how much peace you can maintain. You measure progress not by how much you achieve, but by how little anxiety it takes to achieve it. You no longer ask, how fast can I get there? You ask, how peacefully can I grow here? And that's where the miracle happens. When you stop forcing, you start flowing. When you stop clinging, you start creating. Life begins to collaborate with you instead of correcting you. You realize that you were never being punished by your pauses. You were being prepared for your peace. This is the moment you understand the real meaning of surrender. It's not the end of control. It's the beginning of clarity. When you stop needing to manage every outcome, you create space for miracles to manage themselves. And what used to feel like chaos now feels like choreography. The same storms that once terrified you now teach you rhythm. The same silence that once scared you now sounds like serenity. That's how faith heals what control can't. It takes your fear and turns it into flow. It takes your anxiety and turns it into awareness. It takes your restlessness and transforms it into resilience. You start walking lighter, breathing deeper, living slower. You realize that surrender didn't take your power, it revealed it. There's a sacred turning point in life, a moment when you stop asking, when will it happen, and start saying, whenever it happens, I'll be at peace. That moment is not resignation, it's revelation. It's the moment you discover the true freedom that comes from surrender, the kind of freedom that no amount of control could ever create. You stop chasing outcomes, and outcomes start chasing you. You stop forcing doors, and doors begin to open on their own. That's not magic. That's what happens when the soul learns to trust timing more than tension. Surrender doesn't take you out of the game. It puts you in alignment with the rhythm of life itself. It's the difference between rowing against the current and learning to sail with the wind. The same energy that once made you anxious becomes the same energy that moves you forward effortlessly. The work doesn't disappear. You still show up, still plan, still act, but you no longer operate from fear. You operate from flow. You stop controlling outcomes and start cooperating with wisdom. From a psychological perspective, surrender shifts the entire chemistry of the brain. It moves you from the survival mindset where everything feels urgent, dangerous, and heavy, to the creative mindset where ideas come easier, empathy deepens, and calm becomes your default state. You stop seeing everything as a threat and start seeing it as a teacher. You move from reaction to response, from panic to presence. Spiritually, this is what faith looks like when it matures. You no longer beg life to make sense. You trust that sense will come in time. You no longer interpret delay as denial. You see it as divine editing. You begin to understand that some doors close, not because you're unworthy, but because peace was protecting you from something you couldn't see yet. The moment you accept that truth, every disappointment starts to look like direction. That's the quiet miracle of surrender. It gives meaning to what once felt meaningless. You look back at every detour and realize that what you called a mistake was actually mercy. The people who left, the plans that failed, the seasons that stretched too long, they were all working together to build the version of you who can finally handle peace without fearing it. You don't get peace by avoiding pain. You get it by transforming through it. When you stop trying to control how healing happens faster. The body relaxes, the heart opens, the mind finally stops fighting itself. You begin to trust that the same power that makes stars align and oceans move knows exactly what to do with your life. That realization breaks the illusion of control, and what replaces it is peace so deep it almost feels like still water after a storm. You begin to notice that your days flow differently. You don't rush anymore. You don't over-explain. You don't chase people who walk away. You stop begging life to give you what it's already promised to deliver in its own timing. You become patient, not because you stopped caring, but because you've started understanding. You realize that what is meant for you can't be taken, and what isn't meant for you can't. This is where miracles begin to unfold naturally. The right people find you without striving. The right opportunities appear without forcing. The answers arrive when you're not looking. You start experiencing what psychologists call serendipity, meaningful coincidences that seem to fall into place as if life is guiding you step by step. But spiritually, it's more than coincidence, it's confirmation. It's life responding to faith instead of fear. And something even deeper happens. Gratitude expands. You stop thanking life only when things go your way. You start thanking it in advance, in the middle, even in the mystery. You learn to praise before proof. That's not blind optimism, it's radical trust. It's understanding that even the detours are divine. Every season, even the ones that broke you, was carrying you closer to this peace. Ask yourself, what if the things that didn't work out actually saved you from something smaller than what you were meant for? That's how surrender reframes the story. It turns pain into perspective, loss into liberation. You stop wishing things had gone differently because you realize they went exactly as they needed to. Surrender is not passive, it's participation with purpose. It doesn't say, do nothing. It says, do what you can and trust what you can't. It doesn't erase your dreams, it refines them. It strips away the illusion that you were ever in control so you can finally participate in creation instead of trying to dominate it. And as this peace becomes your home, your whole presence changes. People notice something in you, a quiet strength, a lightness, a serenity that can't be faked. You don't talk about faith, you radiate it. You've become the living proof that what control couldn't fix, trust could heal. So when you find yourself at the edge of frustration again, when your plans fall apart or timing seems cruel, pause, breathe. Remember, this isn't happening to punish you, it's happening to prepare you. The same storm that tried to drown you is now teaching you how to sail. You're not losing control, you're gaining connection. That's what the psychology of surrender reveals. The more you trust, the more life cooperates. The more you let go, the more you grow. And when you reach this point of quiet power, you'll never go back to the exhausting life of control again, because peace feels too good and faith feels too free. There comes a moment when you no longer chase peace. You become it. You stop waiting for life to calm down, and you realize the calm was meant to come from within you all along. That's when surrender transforms from a concept into a way of being. You no longer wake up wondering what might go wrong. You rise knowing that even if it does, you'll be guided through it. That's the quiet confidence of faith. Not that everything will go your way, but that you'll be okay, no matter which way it goes. You've reached a stage now where your soul trusts the timing of things. You don't need to rush to understand. You don't panic in the unknown. You don't fear silence anymore, because silence has become sacred to you. You've learned that God, or life, or the universe, whatever name you give to the source of peace, speaks loudest when you stop fighting for control. You've learned that surrender isn't about letting life happen to you. It's about flowing with life as it happens for you. Psychologically, the person who surrenders is no longer at war with reality. The war ends. The nervous system rests. The mind stops scanning for danger. The heart stops replaying the past. You're not shrinking into passivity. You're expanding into presence. You stop trying to fix every detail because you finally trust the design. You breathe again deeply, freely, fully. This is what healing looks like when it's complete. You stop controlling conversations that once triggered you. You stop forcing people to stay who were meant to leave. You stop resenting endings because you now see them as beginnings in disguise. You start saying thank you for the lessons that once hurt the most, because those lessons gave you this peace. Faith has replaced fear as your compass. You no longer wake up asking, what if it doesn't work? You wake up saying, whatever happens, I'll find purpose in it. You begin to see your entire life, even the painful parts, as a spiritual classroom. And in that classroom, surrender is not the final lesson, it's the doorway to everything else. There will still be storms. There will still be moments that test you, confuse you, even break you open again. But you'll never fight them the same way. You'll face them with grace instead of grasping. You'll breathe instead of breaking. You'll listen instead of panicking, because you've learned that faith is not the absence of storms, it's the ability to sleep through them. That's the psychology of surrender: a healed nervous system, a quiet mind, and a heart that trusts what logic can't explain. It's the art of knowing that you don't need to understand everything to be at peace. You don't need to control the process to receive the promise. You just need to keep showing up, doing what you can, and releasing what you can't. You'll start noticing life moving differently around you. People will comment on your calmness, your glow, your presence. They'll ask, how are you so peaceful when so much is uncertain? And you'll smile, not out of pride, but recognition, because you'll remember when you weren't this way. You'll remember the nights you wrestled with worry, the seasons you tried to fix everything, the prayers you cried from exhaustion. And you'll realize that surrender didn't just bring peace, it brought power. You'll know then, deeply and quietly, that you no longer need to control what's coming, because you trust who's guiding it. You'll live differently, softer, slower, freer. You'll work with focus, love with openness, and rest without guilt. You'll stop apologizing for protecting your peace. You'll stop explaining your pace. You'll stop chasing what doesn't feel aligned. You'll walk with the knowing that everything that's meant for you will recognize you. It always has, and it always will. So breathe. Release the weight. Let the need to control melt off your shoulders. You've done enough. You've tried enough. You've worried enough. Now it's time to trust. Time to let faith do what control couldn't. Time to surrender, not as an act of defeat, but as a declaration of freedom. Because the truth is, control was never keeping you safe, it was keeping you small. And faith, real faith, doesn't make life perfect, it makes it peaceful. You were never meant to carry it all. You were meant to trust, to flow, to heal. And the moment you truly surrender, that's the moment you finally return home to yourself. The psychology of surrender is the healing of the human heart. It's the softest revolution there is, the moment fear kneels and faith stands.